everyone, and welcome to the first episode of Power Nickel's new monthly series hosted by Six. I'm pleased to introduce our speakers for today, Power Nickel's CEO, President, and Director, Terry Lynch. And today we're also joined by the President of 3D Geo Solution, Ken Williamson, as well as their consulting geologist, Matthew DeGasperis. Terry, Ken, and Matt are going to walk us through a company presentation, and then we'll be taking questions live. I'd like to remind the audience that you can ask your questions using the Q&A tab found on the right-hand side of the screen at any time during today's presentation. And as a note, because today's presentation is the first of their new monthly series, with your registration and attendance of today's event, you'll automatically be notified for next month's episode. As always, this event is being recorded and is going to be available on Six.com afterwards. Without further ado, Terry, I'd like to hand things over to you to get us started.
Thanks, Cam. Thanks for having us here, and looking forward to updating our shareholders and interested possible investors into Power Nickel and the exciting things that are going on in our company today. I'm very pleased to have Ken and Matthew on the podcast with us today. Ken and Matthew have been guiding Power Nickel ever since we acquired the deposit, almost 2 years ago now. When we had acquired the NIST deposit from Critical Elements, who was our partner, they had a lot of domain expertise working in this particular area, and Critical Elements suggested strongly that we consider hiring them, and we talked and we had a meeting of the minds, and I'm super glad we did, because we basically had Ken and Matthew and their team at 3D Geo model the deposit from a 3D perspective for the first time. And then we'll sort of what we learned from that was sort of guided us on our exploration program, which has been very successful. So what I'll do today, our objective, I would say today, is just to give you a brief update of what's going on, and then dive really into sort of a transparent discussion on the deposit, and our theories on the deposit, and what we've learned and what we're continuing to learn, and we'll go from there. Ken and Matthew are also our 43-101 authors, so they're not here to give stock recommendations. Clearly, that's if anybody's job, it would be mine. But today we're really just going to be focusing on more of the deposit, because I believe in mining. If you have a great deposit that can eventually become a mine, you'll eventually have a great stock. And so what's most important for us as managers of a mining public company is to find a great deposit and to prove it up. And so that's what we're in the process of doing. And what today's conversation will be about is just exactly how that process occurs, to help educate our shareholders and our interested parties as to what steps we're taking to de-risk and expand the deposit, and to help you understand our approach, and hopefully you'll like what we're doing. So I'm going to without further ado just go through a little bit of a slide deck very quickly, just to sort of position us as to where we're at in the world, and sort of a little bit of I call it a positioning piece, and then we'll get right into some questions that I'll ask Ken and Matthew to guide us somewhat on the mining side of things, and then ultimately as this conversation goes and the audience listens, and you have questions in your own mind, please in the right hand side there's a chat box there. You can enter questions, and then at the right time we'll take a break from our conversation and start to answer some of those questions. So the whole idea is to be a bit interactive here, and to give you a chance to sort of talk to the people that are really guiding us, and hopefully into discovery what we believe will be Canada's next nickel mine. So without further ado, I'm going to don my glasses, because sometimes this stuff gets a little bit detailed and Terry's old eyes can't see it. So I'm going to skip past that. So where are we at? So basically, we're at just south of James Bay in Quebec, and that's a really great area geologically speaking. A lot of mineral activity up there. It's very charged. There's a number of lithium mines being developed in the area. We're literally about 5, I guess maybe 7 to 10 kilometers from the Nemaska deposit and mine. Critical Elements, who we acquired NISC from, is building the Rose lithium deposit. That's probably 50 clicks away, and Galaxy's building one as well. So it's a charged area. And what's good is as these mines are being developed, it shows that it's possible to get permitting. And why is that? Well, a number of good reasons. One, Quebec is probably the most pro-mining jurisdiction in the planet, or one of them. It's certainly in northern Quebec, the Quebec government's done an amazing job of engaging with the Indigenous First Nations communities and doing a good job of making them participants in the process, so that we've got really great community support. The Cree, which is our local native partner in where our project is they're very pro mining friendly, and it's really important in mining to have community support as it relates to getting permits ultimately to build these things, because there's no point in discovering a mine if you can't build it. And there's spots in the world where that's possible, and it's too hard to find it if you can't build it. So we're blessed to be in Quebec and in an area where that's possible. The other thing that's important to note is that we're literally across the road from a major Hydro-Quebec substation. Why is that important? Well, there's a road to our project, and in many places in mining, you have to take helicopters, and it's super off-road vehicles, and the more you have to do that, the more expensive it is to explore and develop. So the good news for us is we can drive off the road to our project, and we can drill it. Our drillers can actually go back and actually stay at a local resort overnight. So it's one of the, in my years in mining, one of the best sites I've ever been working on in terms of logistics. So that's really going to be important as we go forward in terms of developing the mine, exploring the mine in a cost-effective way. The fact that we're across the road from the Hydro-Quebec substation is also important because, ESG is a big part of the world today, and that nickel, the very fact that nickel is hot right now is in large part because of ESG and the electrification and the greening of the power grid, and people wanting to drive electrical vehicles and not fossil fuel vehicles. So obviously having a Hydro-Quebec substation right across the road means it'll be very possible to make this nickel mine one of the greenest in history, if not the best. So, and quite cost effective, because Quebec hydroelectric power is amongst the best in the world and the most cost effective. So those are all, subtle, significant positives, I would say, to the location. And I think it's sometimes we forget these things. We don't really emphasize them a lot, but if you were to pick a spot to make a discovery and make a mine, I would think, here would be as good as it gets. So now what do we got? So the guys, actually, Ken and Matthew, were the authors of this, and this was the first initial resource. So you can see it's generally about 4 million tons if you add them together, all the various indicated and inferred, and generally speaking, it's about 1.25% on average nickel EQ. We think we took a very conservative base case using $8 nickel, and there's PEAs that have been done since we've been published ours that have used 960 nickel. So obviously 43-101 wise, we could have done that, and that would have boosted this thing to 5 million tons. But we kept it at 8, and the reason why we did that is the company we'd like you to think we're going to be like when we grow up here is Talon Metals, and maybe we'll switch to this next slide since that has them there. So this is a comparison of what I would say is our peers, nickel sulfide deposits of 1% EQ or better, and the point I would make here is we're right now the cheapest, i.e. we're the least expensive. And Talon Metals is the most expensive. So we're getting a little over 10 cents a pound of nickel discovered in the ground. Talon Metals is getting more than $1.20, and these numbers are dated. I think they're up significantly since then. The point is, generally speaking, we're cheaper than any of the other deposits, and I would argue that we certainly feel like we're of them all. We're very bullish on our abilities to get to be commercial. What that slide shows is that Talon Metals is the only, deposit at the moment that the market thinks is going to get commercialized. and as a result, they're getting rewarded with a fairly high price, north of $1 a pound for nickel discovered in the ground. So as the investing world becomes confident that this mine will become commercial, we're going to trend towards that number. That's just going to happen, and because there's no reason why it wouldn't happen. We're in an easier jurisdiction to build than Tidal Metals. We're a shallower deposit, so there's no other owies out there that would come and bite you and say, oh well, there's something we don't know. No, everything we know is even better really here than there. The one thing is the market is waiting to decide, yes, this is going to get commercial and should get rewarded with a bigger price per nickel discovered in the ground. When that happens, obviously that will have an amazing impact on our stock, and we believe that's going to happen soon, and that's why we're communicating the story such as we are now, and why we're drilling again. So the deposit itself, this is what it looks like from an isometric view. And I guess what's naturally you're drawn to your eye is this white section in here, and you say, well, why is that? And generally speaking, it's just because we didn't drill there. So we'll be drilling there in this round as part of our infill drilling programs. And this is just a view of the inferred and indicated side of things. Again, just showing the gaps that can be infilled. So we'll is it likely there is ore between these spots? Highly likely. Nothing is for sure in this mining industry. There can always be some faults in here. We don't know, but highly likely that'll get in this round. We'll be able to tap that out and add that to our deposit, and that's fairly low risk drilling for us. The more exciting part of where we're going, I'll just skip that for a second, is we see this inverted V here, and generally this red dot here, that was our best intersection, sort of 2.5% plus nickel EQ. And we're stepping out from that in a number of different ways just to see where it goes. And, this is when we're going to start to chat with the guys in a second about the deposit and why we're doing certain things, because I'm not a geologist. My mission is to make sure the company's adequately funded and we hire the best people to grow this deposit and find it. And that's what I've done. And the guys that we're actually looking to guide us are the guys we got on the call right now, and we're gonna talk to them. In fact, we're gonna step back to this one slide because I'd like them to position. When I'd never drilled nickel before. Nickel is a new mineral for me as a investor and as a mining promoter, and I've always been sort of in the copper or gold. So with nickel, it's a little bit of a different. There's sort of sulfides and laterites, and there's class 1 nickel and other nickel. So there's some interesting things. One of the things I learned, and we'll start maybe the conversation with Ken and Matthew now, is that when you have a nickel sulfide deposit, historically speaking, around the world, there's many of these, and the particular type of deposit that we believe we have here is called an ultramafic deposit, and examples of that would be Lynn Lake in Manitoba, which is around 22 million tons, and Voisey's Bay, which is obviously Newfoundland and Labrador, that is I think plus 50 million tons. Those are ultramafic deposits. So we feel that this is what this is, and so these particular areas, this is where we're drilling right now in Nisk, Maine. And you can see, we've seen some similar geophysical anomalies here. And what we know historically in the world is that when you make these discoveries, the ones that are in production, not a single one that's been in production that's just one deposit. There's always multiple deposits. So we're exploring Nisk, Maine, and we'll get into that in some detail. But it's highly likely there is other spots. So, guys, I'm going to come to you now with a sort of the give us a little, I'm giving the people a bit of a perspective of what I understand on nickel sulfide deposits and why there's multiple things, but maybe, let's turn it over to you and you can guide us a bit more on these types of things. Ken, maybe you can start with you.
Yeah, I'll go ahead. First of all, by mentioning that your description of the situation is pretty much what it is, Terry, in the field, in the sense that the Nisk deposit itself is a sulfide-related nickel deposit. Some questions were asked way at the start of the the project there. Was it the Nuckside style deposit, which is completely different? But no, we're in the Abitibi here, or Archean age rocks. Very typically, what we could get in such environments are ultramafic flows that will typically, you know, be extruded from a volcano or something like that, and you end up with massive lava flows on the ground. And the nature of the thing just makes it such that heavy minerals or heavy metals, nickel and chromium and things of that nature, will have a tendency, just it's not the right terms, I guess, but will have a tendency to sink at the bottom of them flows, and will concentrate themselves that way. So that's the natural process of creating such a nickel rich lens, I guess, within such a lava flow. And we think that the ingredients are all there to at NISC to concentrate nickel in such way that it could become economics. And the study we've done recently with that 43101 reporting and mineral resource estimates is confirming somehow that there is a deposit there. We can now say it's a deposit post MRE, and it is a deposit of, I would say for now, due to the very little amount of drilling so far that there has been done in the deposit itself, it's a fairly significant size deposit as well. In the sense that the location of it closer to surface is a game changer in the resource itself. As you did mention, Terry, it's a combination of really good factors here, but the presence of that mineralization closer to surface allows us to split the deposit type in terms of mining into an underground operation versus open pitting it. And open pit scenario is a lot cheaper, and so it makes it really good. And because of that, what we look at now is, we know we have a deposit. We know we've are going through that lava flow, so to speak. Now the idea is to find out where are those better concentrated lenses of nickel in there. And as you did indicate, there are from geophysical work and geology work done in the past, indications that it is not the only lens that we have to deal with. So NISC main is what we've worked on so far and defined the resource on. But definitely from the image we see on screen, there are those little hot color blobs that we see are good spots that we will follow up on, and with the hope of discovering something very similar to NISC main in those other areas.
Very, very, very well said. So without further ado, Matthew, we're not going to put you to work here too. This is sort of a interesting side to me. When we were first discussing, how does this deposit work? Where are we going to find the prize, and why? And so this is sort of the current thinking, and the purple circles you see here are actual drill targets that we're drilling on in this campaign as we go forward. And the way, and these other lighter grade ones are permitted areas for us to do more drilling, because the neat thing about nickel that I love is that you pretty much know when you're drilling if you're in the sweet stuff. And we've got the XRF machine on site, and the rock that we're looking for is very distinctive, so you get a sense of it. But as we're drilling in here, it'll identify possibly other drilled targets for us to follow up on, with more immediacy than others. And that's sort of why we laid this all out. But Matthew, why don't you walk us through what we're thinking of here, and what we discovered, and when you guys were modeling it, how you came to this theory of for this is the NIST main.
Yeah. So Basically, the NIST main block model is presented here under the base case mining scenario. And then overlain in red show high-grade trends, which are based off of variography. And it's interesting to note that those trends line up with how the mining methods, the DSO shapes were modeled with the engineering firm. So it lines up quite well, which validated our variography work. And then, so the plan for the drill program was to do a combination of infill drilling and then step out as well to identify potentially the west target, and then further on the wildcat targets that were previously shown in magnetics. So the blue dots there represent the current drill program, and currently we are on, I believe, the third hole, and we are working on the infill gap there in the central portion. The idea behind starting there was to give the team on the ground a better sense of the rocks before stepping out further. And then we will continue to the west side, so targeting at depth near the central high-grade hit that we had hit in December 2021, down at depth there.
Yep.
To the left. So the goal will be to continue toward that way, and then hit a couple of step out targets in the west zone target. And the idea behind there was to step out from known high grade intercepts, 50 to 100 meters, and then so we currently have 5,700 meters permitted or planned for this program, but in total we have over 30,000 meters permitted, so which gives us the option to modify on the fly as we go, and then also to drill more if we're capable of financially.
If I may just compliment on that, Matthew, thank you very much for the good description. Was just wanted to add here that if we recall one of the slide from before showing the categories, where Terry was describing that V shape which is empty in the middle. What we need to realize here is it's empty in terms of a resource. I mean, we had to declassify those blocks as being some sort of a mineral inventory from now on, because the drilling density was not high enough and sufficient enough to categorize that portion of the resource as a resource. But that doesn't mean that the mineralization isn't there. I mean, we have drill holes confirming that there is nickel actually in that gap area in the central part of the NISC main deposit. It's just a matter of drilling that more to be able to reclassify them portions of the resource to hopefully an inferred at least, or up to an indicated resource category. Thing is, we have to realize here that it's a little different than a gold deposit where you'd have tiny veinlets that you chase, and then continuity is a big thing in gold deposit. Here, due to the nature of that deposit, we were discussing about major lava flows or a sill of a major importance with accumulation of nickel in specific spots within that lava flow. Well, continuity is a lot greater naturally here in nickel style deposit than what it would be for gold. So that to me is an essential component that we need to understand, in the sense that drilling here should show lots of continuity unless we are hitting structures, and unless the deposit gets cut by something that is external to the deposit itself. We believe that this will happen on both sides of the NISC main, with coupled structures that seem to have major impacts on location now of that same prolific unit. But with the indications that we have from mag maps and other geological information that we've gathered from the past drilling and that we are gathering in the current drilling phase too. That's the other component I'm going to touch base on in 2 seconds. But we are positioning ourselves to better understand and better define where to drill next after on outside or past them faults. So the what Matthew described as being Nisk West gap and the Nisk West extension area are areas like that where we have indications that the lens is now there as compared to where it was with the main lens. Historical holes have shown little sniffs, I guess, of nickel in there. So that's why we are targeting this. The wildcat targets to the east will be the same thing. Good sniffs that we have. So it's really good education guess that we're taking by setting up a drill up there. And what we also need to realize is the more we'll drill, the more educated guesses like that can be made, because the more information we get, the better we'll know where to drill next. So essentially what we're doing here, I think, with Theory in collaboration with Terry and Power Nickel, is to be using the study we've done for the mineral resource estimate, trying to learn the most that we can out of that, and then reapply that science in the field in a real life situation where we can actually guide uh, the drilling operator and Terry as far as from that resource work, and with new data that we're throwing in there, we can update that thing live, pretty much, and deciding the day after where to drill next. And that's basically that hand in hand relationship that is happening right now.
Yeah.
So sorry, it's a little bit outside of the topic there, but
No. I think that's all good information for the audience to get, and it's good. It's always good, even for myself, to listen to it again. I sort of, in my mind's eye, sort of when I talk to people and I describe the deposit, I say, well, it's like a river, and the river, it winds and it bends, and sometimes it can come almost back on itself, and there's shallow parts of it, and there's deep parts of it, and there's narrow parts of it, and there's wide parts of it. So it's very much like this. Lava flow was effectively a river back in the day, I guess, and so it can, and that's why when I asked last, when this program was put together, and I look on the screen, I see, this is the red spot that's what we want. We want a lot more red spots on this chart, because that would make us all happy. And so, it's interesting. You see how these three holes, are basically surrounding it, but because we think it's going this way, but we don't really know, and that's the reality of mining, is that, this thing, we think it could be meandering down this way, but it could come straight down too, so that's why, we have to sort of drill it,
and you know what, Terry, sorry I'm cutting you, but
Yeah.
it just, what you're saying is so true, but it's through both ways. I mean, it could go one way, it could go the other way, or it could go both ways too, right? So we need to cover, I mean, all options now in terms of where to drill next, internal to that ore body that we've defined, but also outside. That's another thing. And inside it, there are a few things that we need to achieve. We are focusing right now at following up that super nice intercept that we have in the bottom left of the defined lens, with a few holes there that should allow us to expand. Now, that being said, in the core portion of it, there are some holes there. Some people may ask, well, why are you guys drilling there? It seemed to be already drilled. Well, those holes are meant to confirm and are meant to infill. So if it's too weak or relatively weak in terms of category, that it's borderline to be an inferred versus indicated, or not even a resource, well, we've decided to poke holes there to answer those questions and not have that question anymore. And overall, I guess the program is designed to, once we're done, and now I'm speaking as the resource geo, completely independent. Once we're done, I'm hoping that we would have gathered different data enough, different style of data enough based on our own recommendations. So it should happen. But at that point, to be able to have a revamped data set that will be a lot easier to play with and handle than the data set that we had initially, which was somewhat incomplete. And that's why we're drilling now, and that you've drilled last year to complement that drilling pattern. So personally, I think we're on the perfect way to make things happening here, at least in terms of resource. What the output will be, I don't know. But will that resource work be well done based on, educated guesses and voluntarily drilling areas where the knowledge is weaker, such that we can de-risk actually that project, is essentially what Matthew and I are aiming for, de-risking this, because we've demonstrated it's there. So let's de-risk it and let's grow this if we can, So is the overall strategy, I would say.
So this is another slide. Another way to look at it is and just sort of touching, gives Ken a bit more. You probably can see it a bit better with this slide. The purple holes, and this is the area he was talking about. Drilling in there. The infill drilling here, just to sort of categorize this particular deposit. In addition to obviously exploring this and exploring this area over here, which are probably going to be more promising from a growth perspective. But you got to do all these things in order to make these things come to work, because at the end of the day, this is one pod, we hope, and obviously it's the only pod we've got right now. But in all likelihood, there is going to be another pod over here to the left or to the right, or possibly a kilometer away. We don't know. This is the nature of these nickel sulfate deposits, is they generally congregate in a reasonable geographic area, and what that typically there are 3 or 4 pods. And it's like, I remember having the conversation with Ken, and he was saying, well, historically this is what happens in these types of deposits, that you'll have multiple pods, and then what are the odds that Niskmain was the best one? Well, I mean, the math of it, if you find 4 pods there, that when you find one, well, the odds that this is the best is 1 in 4, because that's you'll know when you get them all open and identified. But I mean, it's what's good, as a mine promoter, somebody who's trying to basically prove to the market that this will become a commercial mine, and as a result enable us to get the resources we need to actually show that in a more proven way, scientifically, through advancing the 43-101 process, and updating the mineral resource estimates, and ultimately doing PEAs and PFSs and etc. Is you got to, obviously you have to have raised significant capital to do that. Well, you have to de-risk it. You have to show the market that it's worthy, and this is the work that will get us there. And we think with obviously there's a very good likelihood on after this round that we'll be able to have a nice resource estimate, and that'll put a smile on our face. We can't say we can't ask Ken and Matthew to give us that number, because they're not Nostradamus. They can't predict that, and they would lose their license if they did. So that's not their gig. But I mean, obviously, you can just as reasoned people, we can look at this graph and can sort of see there's a lot of potential to add more area underneath this graph. That's going to get colored in, because the drilling will have confirmed that resource is there, and then they can include it in a resource estimate. And as we step out from the red spot here, and hopefully find more red spots around here, then obviously that can be added too. So we don't know if that'll happen. That might be the only one, but the gods are we're hoping will be more generous, and that this will be a bit of a red area. And so I personally think that the 1.25% we're at now is sort of not where we're going to end up. I think we'll end up at a higher grade as we go forward. You know, we you know, as we just step back there, you know, Ken touched on it a bit, was the nature of how we see developing this thing is initially an open pit at the top, and then there'd be a couple of declines. So the declines might be, you know, these areas here, to be determined by the drilling, of course. But to the extent that we could do that, that would be a very economic way to go at this mine, right, Ken? Is that sort of the way to sort of?
Well, that's the way we've been thinking about it. Both the engineering firm and ourselves. Engineering firm, by the way, was Innovexplo, did a terrific work for us in no time. So just wanted to thank them for that.
Yes.
Live.
Yep.
Yeah, so it's split in two. Typically, what we do with that in real life would be to excavate, I guess, the top portion first, and then from the bottom of that pit, ramp down, and for cheaper, get that underground resource out of the ground. Now, the thing is, for me, we've discussed about that, you and I, before, but if we were able to discover parallel lenses near surface, good or bad, I mean, they could be tiny or big. Bigger would be better, but say just tiny few lenses that could contribute somehow to the economics in the in-pit portion. That could be also a, a, a game changer in terms of economics for the project. So what we've not talked about in great detail, I guess, but that geologists here working on the project are keeping in the back of our head is that we're drilling. The main targets are obviously the main sulfide lens that we're trying to reach there. But obviously, anything else that we see from surface down to there is of importance. So you
Yeah.
alluded to XRF that is on site right now, things like that. Well, I'm not going to go in great detail, but let's just say that GeoVector, the consulting company that is taking care of
Executing
the
our drill
drilling
program.
for you
Yep.
and for us,
Yep.
is there in the field trying to gather as much data as we can right now, which is totally what they should be doing. I'm totally happy with that in the sense that, um, you know, the nature of the deposit, the more data we'll gather, maybe it will become possible at one point to identify where we are in the stratigraphy of the deposit by drilling using XRF and characteristics of them units and whatever else. And that would make our life, targeting things and defining where to drill next and things a lot easier. So at this stage, I guess the resource component super important to keep in mind. Yeah, we've done a mineral resource estimate especially for that. But also what we need to realize too is in parallel to all of that, let's say economic related work, there is a lot of good geological work that people will never hear of, probably because only geos will get interested by that. But at the end of the day, all of that information is somewhat digested by us and incorporated into the resource estimate that we've done. So we've done that initially, and we'll continue to do that. And with the more and more precise and I would say deep information that we gather from the deposit, with more technology being involved, and we're thinking maybe enhancing the surface, the surface mapping by flying a lidar or geophysical stuff, or we're defining this right now. But all of this is aiming at one thing: is de-risking the mineral resource estimate that we'll end up doing in a few months from now, like
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
the update. We want to gather as much as we can, such that we can, uh, take the lens itself, but surrounding this with geology information to help us out, either at discovering a new one or help us out doing real good work when it comes times to actually deal with the NISC lens itself. And what I
Mhm.
mean by this, thinking in the future, we're right now gathering information about rock density, hardness, things like that that could help out, should the project become a real mine at one point. And we all, well, you are wishing for that. I cannot say that I wish for that, but let's say we all need that to happen. Well, things gonna have to get prepared in advance. A lot of engineering's gonna get done in there and things like that. So even if we are at the resource stage, I think it's important for the audience to understand that Terry and I and Matthew are looking at this, with a few years, couple of years in advance, and we're planning now what should be done in 2 years from now. Should it be, successful and positive here, we just don't want to miss that train. So all of this is kind of being tackled at the same time. I would say so. Not
Yeah,
only the resource and drilling, but the whole
and
thing is
and
a whole.
what's interesting, and why we're having this conversation in a transparent way. We're obviously trying to educate our audience as to the deposit, and how it looks now, how we're seeing it, how we're exploring it. Yes, to help them understand how these things are done. And it's like you mentioned, and it's important. GeoVectors are our drilling contractor, and drilling contractor doesn't just drill. There actually is a geologist on site, a very capable Eric Herbert, doing a great job out there. And their job is obviously to target the drill holes on the coordinates that are provided by Matthew and Ken based upon their modeling. But what's interesting, I working through the process, it's an iterative process, because I know Eric saw some ultramafic rocks on surface that that he communicated to Ken and the team, saying, "Hey guys, we've got these rocks on surface here. Maybe we should angle the hole a little bit this way to intersect that ultramafic on surface, so that we can still get to your target. But let's check this ultramafic out that's on surface." Just picking up into Ken's point of, obviously, to the extent that we could, find some more lenses on surface that are higher grade, or add to the deposit, or whatever, it would certainly improve the economics. And those are the little things that make a big difference in making economics work on these projects and adding resources. And it's all part of the the science of developing and exploring a mine. And it's interesting to see it in real time and be part of it. I mean, unfortunately, a lot of the, I've been looking for gold and copper, which is a different beast than this. And it's much more difficult, I find. This is like an interesting, maybe I just, obviously we're lucky here. We had a historic deposit to work with. We believed it was actually true, and it turns out it was. But it's been interesting to work with it, because you're actually able to sort of chase down these leads in real time. And the neat part about people are wondering, maybe I didn't know what an XRF was until I actually saw one at PDAC. And basically, an XRF is just think of it as an X-ray gun for minerals, really. That it does like a beam of light over a particular section of a rock, and based on that can give you the mineralogy of that rock for that beam. Okay, and that it doesn't mean that the whole thing is like that. It just means that one beam has these particular characteristics, and it's just it does help you in this case, with the in the nickel sulfide, to know, hey, are we still in the charged portion of this body? And if we are, then great, we can keep on going, because that generally the stuff will continue to flow. But that's what we mean when we say XRF. And these are the tools that the site geologists can use to get early data and feedback it to Matthew and Ken, who can then sort of say, okay, well, that's a check mark there, and that may help them in their modeling as to interpretations as to what does that mean to them and to us, in terms of advancing things forward in the least risky way forward. I mean, always when we're spending money, as we do in mining, chasing these things, is we're trying to do things with the least amount of risk. It's incredibly risky business. Most of the time, you're coming up with goose eggs, because Mother Earth doesn't give it up very easily. She's very difficult, and but that's her nature. But she does share her clues, and she does give you, the scientists. And what I found is that work, and not because obviously I'm not a scientist. I've worked with a lot of geophysicists and geologists over the years, and I found that the good ones are scientists, but they're also artists. They have a somewhat of a feel somehow. I don't know. It's one of those things you can't teach. It's like the years of reading and research, or whatever, have given these people a sixth sense, if you would, of where the rocks are flowing, where the good ones are. And luckily, I believe Ken and Matthew actually had that, and we're blessed as a company to be able to have retained these guys and have them giving us advice, because they're guiding us in a great path here. Where the last round we hit 7 of 8 holes where we hit our target, which is, man, I've had entire drill programs where if we got 1 out of the 20 holes, we were we were happy, because at least you got something. But no, you get 7 of 8. I mean, that's ridiculous. Now, obviously, we were that part of the drilling was not aggressive. We were basically stepping out from known spots. But anyway, it was very, very impressive, and that's what it takes to find these things, is to try and follow up on these, get the data, use the science as best you can, and inevitably, we're going to drill some, what I call them dry holes, but they're basically just holes that don't contain any nickel, or what we're targeting, but it will still be helpful because it'll say that's not where to go. You know what I mean? And so we'll know, okay, that's part of the education program. And hopefully, in the early parts, because we're, as a public company, super low market cap, we want to have more hits than empties, but so that we can get our stock price up, so we can do this more effectively. But generally speaking, all data is good data. It'll help us get towards the promised land, and that's what you get the really great scientists like Ken and Matthew, and they can take that data and really help to guide the thing, and it's really impressive to see it in real time. Guys, it's been an interesting part for me, because I again, my first nickel deposit to be proving up, and it's been a revelation to see how it's approached and how you interact with the geologists that are on the rig and at surface, and how iterative the whole thing is, and it's exciting to see it.
I can't agree more with that, Terry. Absolutely. And the cool thing too is, you alluded to it, but it is a closed circle right now in terms of procedure, from the drill rig to us to you, and it becomes a full circle in the sense that people on the rig right now, they will inform us every day what they've seen, what they've logged, like the quick daily log and things like that. The nature of the beast here allows us, both Matthew and I, to pick that information and refresh the system like off the bat. What when you're in massive sulfides
Yep.
intercept, so you can easily measure it's going to be from there to there. And although we can't guess what the grade of nickel or nickel equivalent is going to be within that given interval, for both Matthew and I, it remains possible to retweak the 3D model that we have in our hands right now without having the real values from the lab. It's been identified what the interval is. So nothing prevents us to be proactive, refresh the model as we drill it, and, if need be, tweak out those targets a bit. And then we're in contact with the guys in the field directly, and they can make those changes. The example you said with the ultramafic unit being seen on surface, and we were, coloring just off it. We would not have even seen it in the drill core without them guys in the field guiding us with that. So it's kind of a process that goes both way. What they see in the field, we use it. What we see in the computer, we tell them. So we
Yeah.
all are on the same page.
Yeah, no, it's very
really cool.
symbiotic. Well, listen, you guys, I think we've done a good job of sort of educating our investors and listeners. And I know there's some questions out there. So Cam, Do you maybe, because I think we're on here for an hour, about 10 minutes left or so, so maybe it might be a good time to, if there's some questions from the audience, to let's get them answered before we're done here.
Sounds like a good plan there, Terry. As a reminder to everyone in the audience, if you do have any questions, please ask them in the Q&A tab found on the right-hand side of your screen. But first question up, are you able to drill through the winter?
Yes, yeah, we're able to drill through the winter. The only time you can't really drill here is in breakup in springtime, which is sort of, it depends, year to year, but I would say mid-May to mid-June or something in that range. Is that what your view is, Ken?
Absolutely, and hunting season.
Oh, and right.
2 weeks break. We are careful about our geologists there. We don't want them to get hurt.
Fair
All
enough.
the considerations. Frank wants to know if there are potentially different mineralogy and products with copper, et cetera, present. Have you started any metallurgy?
Ken, there was some historical metallurgy done, very early on, very preliminary stuff.
Yeah.
And did you want to comment on that?
Well, as far as we can tell right now, I guess it is a multi-element deposit. So you guys have seen on the slides nickel equivalent. It means that there is nickel, but there are also other elements that are worth a certain value in the market. We're talking, what are we talking about? I have a blank of memory.
Palladium.
Matthew, palladium and platinum,
copper, cobalt,
and copper, some
Cobalt.
gold, a tiny bit of it, and things like that. So it will depend. It's too early yet, I think, to discuss metallurgy in great detail. What we can say is it is a multiple elements deposit, and likely, depending where we are in that deposit, the recipe won't necessarily be the same in terms of those elements that makes it as ore. So the mill will have to, the potential mill or eventual mill will have to deal with that depending what's thrown at it, the different recipes and things like that. But there are byproducts other than nickel that contribute to the economics of the project, yes.
Great. Andrew wants to know, Terry, what cash resource are you going to need before you have an economic and commercial deposit? Is more inferred resource needed and further drilling?
Yeah, I mean, basically, I would say the market would say as you get north of 10 million tons, north of 1%, 1.25%, whatever, then the market would start to perceive you as it being a commercial deposit then. I mean, still, market perception and reality are often different things, but generally speaking, I would say that would be the case. I mean, ultimately, that fine way you prove up a deposit is you go from mineral resource estimates to PEAs, and then pre-feasibility studies, and then feasibility studies. And each step of the way, you're de-risking the deposit in some fashion, whether it's through density of drilling or metallurgy or environmental permit risk or et cetera, till finally you get to getting permits. Each step you de-risks it, but the market often perceives risks in different ways. And generally speaking, I would say for us, as we get north of 10 million tons, 8 to 10 million tons, the market will start to say, okay, this is going to be commercial, highly likely to get commercial, and that would move the risk, the value you get for nickel in the ground up.
No, absolutely. I think Ken needs to go at this point here. We do have a couple more questions, though. Andrew has a follow-up, and this is in reference to sort of thinking about the Lassonde curve. But if you're the next Canadian nickel mine, when is that going to start?
You know what? If you were to absolutely crush the ball out of the park, it could be 4 years, but realistically, 7 years. And quite often these things take 10 years. So I mean, there's a fairly large spectrum there. I mean, what we got going for us is great jurisdiction, shallow deposit, relatively, a great infrastructure. We can get to it off the road. The world needs more nickel, so as long as we dot our I's and cross our T's, I don't think raising the capital to bring this thing to production is going to be a problem. We've got lots of interested nickel consumers and nickel producers, wanting to, engage with us right now. So this thing will go very quickly relative to most mines.
Right. Another question: do you see positive feedback from your ESG programs?
It's early days for us, honestly. We I know when I'm talking to investors that they're moved by ESG, that they like that they're investing in a electric vehicle sector, or the critical mineral sector, or the battery metal sector. So I know investors tend to like that. So that's all I could say on that at the moment. Yeah.
No, fair enough. Terry, how deep is the Nisk deposit?
Starts at about, I think, 80 to 100 meters where we start picking up grade. And at this point, I think we've gone down to about, in the last round, maybe 250, 275. And this round, we'll probably get down to 400 meters. And we're open at depth right now, so we don't know how deep it goes.
No,
Ken, you got anything further on that?
It's about that. I guess the resource has been defined down until up to what, 450 meters ish.
That was around 400. Yeah.
Yeah. 400.
Yeah, and as far as we're concerned, mineralization outcrops, so we do see it on surface. So that's why there is an open pit there. So,
Right.
And as you're mentioning, wide open at depth, no constraints, vertically speaking, but couple faults to deal with laterally speaking.
Yep.
So,
absolutely. Another follow-up question to that is, what grade is Nisk, and do we think that we can maintain or enhance this?
As Terry mentioned, nickel equivalent about 1.25 ish in percent in average. The picture we see on screen right now shows different colors in yellow, orange, and red. You can see that the yellow color represents 0.5 to 1.2 nickel equivalent in percent. But the vast majority of the lens itself is more in the orangey color, which is more around that average grade that we see at 1.2, 1.4-ish percent nickel equivalent. So what's inside that white area, should we would have not done engineering, and then would not be 43101. So take this with a grain of salt. We'd then be talking about a mineral inventory, not the mineral resource. But initially, the mineral resource was a mineral inventory, and that white gap in the middle would then be filled with the same kind of grade mineralization. So is grade continuity there? I would say yes, grade continuity is there amongst all of the historical drill holes that we've dealt with or looked at. The new drilling confirmed continuity of grade past historical grade. So there are no reason to believe that this would not continue at this point. So drilling will confirm, but we have high hopes that grade's going to be there, with thickness being preserved as well. So we'll
Fair
see.
enough. Thanks, Ken. And for that matter, Terry, Matt, thank you both. Ken, thank you for coming on today. That's all the time we have, unfortunately. So before we wrap up, though, Terry, I want to pass things back to you just to close us out.
Yeah, well, listen, again, Ken and Matthew, thanks for coming on and helping us to, explain the deposit and our approach to our investors and interested parties. Thanks so much for your work. You guys are doing great work, and keep it up. And we're cheering you on. In addition to paying you, we're cheering you on, because that's your success is our success. So we're feeling good about things at Power Nickel. We think we're doing the right things to move this deposit forward, and we know if we move the deposit forward, the company will move forward in tandem with it, and we're expecting to have a really fantastic next couple of years. So if you're not into Power Nickel stock yet, please check it out. You might find it to be a great Christmas gift for you. and it'll be a gift that keeps on giving, I think. So I'll leave you with that thought, and look forward to seeing you in a month's time, and hopefully we'll have some update for you then. Have a great day, and take care.